Okay, you guys, I decided to do a live stream this evening to address several issues regarding the current coronavirus in terms of where are we as far as trying to figure out is coronavirus the problem or whether or not there are existing issues going on even before coronavirus, and why are so many people confused? So grab your coffee or your tea and let's take a look at which actually came first and what are the consequences of being confused about what's actually going on. Okay, so to start off, I have to admit online, people are just way too divisive in terms of trying to figure out what's going on. I think one of the major issues that I'm encountering when I see people online having discussions is people are divided into groups. There's factions. There's the group that says, let's go back to work, let's jumpstart the economy, and we want business as usual, right? Let's go back to business as usual. And then on the other side, you have people who are saying, no, we need to be in quarantine for as long as it takes. That way, when we do go back, we'll have less cases and everything will be that much better. Well, I just want to let you know that the truth is actually somewhere in the middle, and we really need to consider that there's a bigger point, a bigger issue involved, okay? Number one, and I've been tracking a number of different things, okay? First of all, we can't be financially illiterate. We can't have a lack of knowledge on economics and finances, because what I'm going to refer to has more to do with the economy, the way Wall Street operates, and the way money works. Okay, once you get a good understanding of how these things work, then a lot of this will make sense. But if it doesn't make sense, it's because you guys are grappling with too many basic concepts, and you're not getting a very good understanding in terms of the economics and finances and the nature of money itself, okay? So one major issue is this. For the last 8 or 9, 10 years at least, we've had for at least a decade, we've had a booming stock market, okay? And a lot of that stock price appreciation has been maintained by constant money printing. The actual fuel that kept stock prices going up and up and up, you know, fueling this bull run for the last 10 years at least, has been provided by the Federal Reserve and financial engineering. See, when companies want to keep their stock prices appreciating, there's typically two things, mainly two things that will cause a company's stock price to depreciate. And I'll get to Corona in a second. One, when you actually sell a product or a service that people are buying, in other words, there's real demand there. That typically makes a publicly traded company stock go up, okay? Now, on the other hand, if you do enough financial engineering, let's say you keep buying back your company stock and you keep rewarding your investors with increasing dividends. Well, that incentive will entice your investors to stay with you, okay? Now, that worked out very well for Amazon as far as, you know, rewarding people with a constantly inflating stock price, you know, because now Amazon is doing very well. But I can tell you that was the exception. A lot of these companies that we see nowadays, they've done way too much financial engineering. In other words, they got a lot of cheap money. They buy back the shares of their stocks very cheaply, and that makes the prices go up. And then they're rewarding shareholders and investors with increasing dividends. That makes stocks go up too. So remember, if you aren't selling enough of your products for your company, or if you're not selling enough of the services that the company offers, then everything else is moot, really, because you're just basically doing financial engineering. And that's been keeping the stock market up. Okay, so when Trump or anybody else talks about a booming stock market as an indicator of true wealth creation in the United States, they're just pulling your leg. Okay, so now how does that translate into the problems that we're having now? Okay, well, believe it or not, the economy was lacking true demand for at least a decade, at least the same amount of time that the stock market has been officially kept propped up, okay? So now the economy itself has been suffering for lack of demand. In other words, when you look at the trucking sector, when you look at freight shipments, whether it's cargo ships or large and small trucking companies and the shipments themselves, when you look at freight that's put on trains, when you look at all of these various metrics that help you determine whether or not there's actual products being shipped back and forth from country to country, they've been trailing down significantly. And if you want to go to my website and take a look at the articles and the blogs, just punch in the search menu where the articles are, just punch in trucking industry or manufacturing recession or the various terms. You'll see that I've been tracking this stuff for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years or something. And I've been documenting this stuff very thoroughly so that, you know, for me, it's a very clear trend that the economy was trailing off and it was starting to show the cracks that a recession was coming. I could tell that the recession was coming and it was being postponed. See, a lot of you guys, you got fooled because, you know, you didn't bother to learn anything about money. You never bothered to look at economics. You never bothered to understand about finance, okay? Matter of fact, the reason why a lot of you are suffering, you're in the food bank lines, okay? You're waiting on stimulus checks. You're arguing with creditors and such about, you know, how am I going to make it? Because you never took into consideration that this party, which was, you know, the economic prosperity that lasted 10, 15 years or whatever, you thought that was going to continue forever, indefinitely. But see, myself included and a lot of business owners and such, we knew that you have cycles. You have economic cycles that go to a phase of prosperity when they're going up, and then they tend to level off, then they start going back down again. That's where you get your recessions and your depressions. And actually, when you have excesses, like what we've had in the stock markets, where, you know, stocks keep going up, stocks keep going up, real estate prices keep going up forever. You know, people thought, you know, there were sure bets on housing, right? And then that collapsed. People thought there were sure bets on even oil, right? Because, you know, why should there be a problem with selling tons of oil, right? But as we saw, oil prices fell through the floor, not to the floor, through the floor, because there was a global recession even before coronavirus. Believe it or not, in Germany, there was a manufacturing recession. In Europe, there were negative interest rates. In Asia, there was negative interest rates in certain countries. People were literally taking their money out of the banking system, putting it into safes and burying it, whatever they could do, because they're being penalized for putting their money into the banks. And that's coming to the United States. Probably this week, I think the Federal Reserve has to make a decision on rates, interest rates. And more than likely, because we had 25 to 30 million people filing unemployment claims, they're going to consider that serious enough to warrant lowering the interest rates. So remember, when Donald Trump and all these people talk about, you know, we had a strong economy and things were fine and dandy, remember, look at your bank statements, look at your checking accounts, look at how much money, look at your own investments. Does it look like you're, you know, a very strong consumer? If not, then don't believe what you know is the facts. The facts is, you know, most people weren't able to put money away. They didn't have very good credit. They didn't have a plan B. They never saw this coming, and they constantly believe the hype, right? So now you suffer the consequences. So believe it or not, a long, long time ago, even Henry Ford said if people knew more about, you know, how the nation runs the monetary system, there would be riots in the street or something like that. I'm just, you know, paraphrasing. But there's a lot of business people, a lot of senators and congressmen, way back when the Federal Reserve was created. They knew when the central bankers took over, they knew this was the beginning of the end. Okay, that means they create money, they pump it through the system to those companies and those individuals who they want to have the money, and we see that right now, even with stimulus money, right? When it first came out, a lot of people, they watched the money go directly to big corporations, and the banks held on to the money for dear life. They didn't give it to individuals. Okay, that's typically how it works. So remember, when you guys are going at each other's throats trying to figure out whether or not the issue is to open the economy or not, or quarantine or not, the quarantine is a distraction. When you go through these various economic cycles, you're always going to have a distraction. Sometimes it's war. That's a major distraction for people, because people have to be convinced that there's an enemy out there, and that enemy is going to come and harm you. So I want you to channel all your resources and all your attention and everything towards the war effort. Okay, Trump couldn't come up with a war, at least not yet, but he could take advantage of this pandemic. Okay, even though the coronavirus seems like it's the cause of the problem, it's not. It came way after the fact. Okay, again, referring back to sluggish and global recession that was already in the works. Okay, and again, if you want to look at my website and take a look at even information about the Federal Reserve and the stimulus money that was being pumped into the system over the last, I don't know, couple of years at least, it's been tons of money that's been holding this thing together. And you know, again, when you have a strong economy, like your leaders told you before Corona, you don't have to keep interest rates artificially low, because there are a lot of baby boomers and such who would benefit tremendously by having higher interest rates on their savings and investments. You know, whatever generation, when they're ready to retire and such, they benefit by having a certain amount of return, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10% return on their retirement accounts and savings accounts and checking accounts. That money goes back into the economy, right? But when your economy is falling apart and unraveling, then you have to keep interest rates artificially low. That means that it's not strong, it's weak, because if you raise it, like Jerome Powell wanted to, if you raise it, things implode. If the economy was strong and you raise rates, then it will slow the economy down. But if your economy is weak and you raise interest rates, you could have a devastating effect. That could create a domino effect where everything starts falling apart. And in some cases, particularly in this situation, it's not so bad to have the economy implode or self-destruct, mainly because we have too many excesses in the system. If you take a look at the billionaires and the wealthy people and the smart money, you can clearly see the insider selling has been ridiculous in the stocks. Okay, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, you name it. Billionaires, corporate executives, CEOs, and such, they've been selling like crazy. Okay, you need to ask yourself why. Okay, if you don't know why, you need to find out why. People typically get out of investments when there's a problem. When someone smells that there's going to be an issue, they start dumping the Microsofts, the Facebooks, the IBMs, whatever it is, right? So when you see insiders selling like that, that means it's time to get out. Even the Congress people, come on, you guys, look at the newspapers every once in a while. A lot of your own favorite congressmen and senators, they were dumping shares of a lot of these publicly traded companies because they got wind and they told their counterparts in the corporate world, okay, you guys, it looks like things are unraveling. Let's start selling, right? And then hold on one second. Then we found out that, you know, people in Washington, those politicians, they got inside information, so they started dumping. Now you guys want to get angry because they dumped shares instead of losing money. You know, they dumped stocks, right? Well, if you have people who obviously don't care about the rule of law in Washington, then I guess, you know, they can do what they want to do. So when you guys go out into the streets and you honk your horns in an effort to go back to work, ask yourself, is that the solution? Is the solution really to go back to work, to earn money denominated in dollars, where all the value is gone? Is that what you want? You want to earn a dollar that has no value. I don't understand how that works. When your Federal Reserve has printed so much money, and that takes the value away from the currency that you have to use, why are you in a hurry to go back to work to earn more of that money that's basically worthless? Okay, that means the groceries, the rent, the mortgage, children's tuition, all those things, you're going to be struggling forever. So maybe this is an opportunity for you guys to not honk your horns about going back to work and opening up the economy, but to change the way the economy works, okay? Typically, you use these crises for your benefit, just like the people in power, corporations, CEOs, politicians, they're using it as an excuse to take away all of your personal freedoms. When they get through with this coronavirus tracking technology, when they get through with the surveillance apparatus that they're putting into place, you won't have any privacy because they put this in place under the guise of, oh, we're going to make sure that we know who's got the bug or not, right? And you guys are distracted totally in terms of trying to figure out whether or not, you know, I need to go back to XYZ company. I can tell you this, when you have a recession, typically when you have a recession or depression, most businesses close down. Do some study of history, past recessions or depressions. There's a total lack of demand for products and services, which means businesses go out of business. That means you really don't have a job to go back to, okay? Now, your little company or a big company, whatever it is that you're working for, they may have kept the doors open for a little while, but I can guarantee you, when you have a recession, most of you aren't going to be going back anywhere. You're going to be doing what you're doing now, waiting for some government handouts, okay? So when you're on your way to these food banks and when you're standing by the mailbox waiting on that stimulus check, remember, what is the real problem going on here? Is the economy structurally, has it changed so much? Is it structurally broken so much to the extent that there's really no need to try and save it, okay? You guys need to be demanding an overhaul of the system. If anything, take a look at Bitcoin, at cryptocurrencies, and the blockchain, because that's a system of accounting for all financial transactions. We call it sound money. There's only 21 million of the Bitcoin. Now, you know, if you're not a Bitcoin fan or a cryptocurrency fan, or you don't know about the blockchain, study it first, research it first, and find out when you have hard money, sound money, versus when you have a money that's used to be backed by gold, used to be backed by petroleum, now it's backed by nothing. Because petroleum, when it fell through the floor, all of the Arab countries and such that were accepting, you know, dollars in exchange for the oil they sold, they ain't gonna want the dollar anymore if it doesn't have any decent backing. You know, it's practically worthless. I mean, guns and trains and tanks and all that, that only goes so far. You know, you can constantly talk about, I'm gonna go to war to convince everybody to accept my dollars, but at some point, people are gonna be like, you know what? I don't need your currency. I don't need your dollars. I'll take a look at some other alternatives. China's going to come out with their own digital currency. It's not going to be successful, in my opinion, but you know, people want choices nowadays. Okay, so take a look at, again, the fact that there's a broken system. Now it's time to change it. Even way back in the 1300s, I think with the 1300s, when they had this Black Plague, the aristocrats were forced to change the system because all of the laborers, a lot of the laborers died, and the laborers said, you know, the few of us left, we're going to command higher prices and higher wages. We want property. So they got a chance to turn a bad situation into a good one. You guys are totally distracted. So again, you need to figure out figure out what you did wrong, first of all, and don't worry so much about your kids are going to be, you know, affected by not being able to touch and interact with people. Just sit down with your kids and explain to them what's going on. And then the suicide rates and all that. Well, believe it or not, okay, this builds character, so to speak. When you have these types of purgings of the system, when the system is purged like this, it's going to demand that we all compromise. Ask your grandparents or your great-grandparents about the Great Depression, okay? Those who survived it, now they know the value of money, okay? There's no such thing as, you know, missing a paycheck for 2 weeks. I mean, missing a paycheck and then not having enough money for 2 weeks, after, you know, after 2 weeks. That is not going to happen with the older generations because they learned. I can guarantee you, these newer generations, millennials and such, you're gonna figure out fast. The next time you're gonna be prepared. Okay, you're gonna see this situation as a learning experience. When you have to pay your rent and your car note or your mortgage or whatever, if you don't have enough money, then you get left behind. You suffer. Okay, you become a statistic. You end up in the food bank lines. You end up waiting by the mailbox for a check, for a handout or something. Okay, but when you look at history and you read history and you research it, you look at depressions and recessions, then you can clearly see you prepare yourself. Just like if there's a storm coming, if somebody told you there's going to be a hurricane or a tornado or earthquake or whatever, if you have enough forewarning, you don't stand around waiting. You start to get the most important things to sustain yourself. And it's not toilet paper. You got to get your food products. You got to put some cash away. You got to have reinforcements for your houses and whatever, okay? That's typically how that works. Certain things are more important than others. In other words, when there's a pending storm or catastrophe, like this coming recession and depression that you guys are going to get a chance to experience. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. Stop, you know, being misled to think this group needs to hate that group and that group needs to hate this group because they want to open up the economy. This group wants to keep it closed down. This group, you know, they're okay with quarantine. The other group is not. This guy has a mask on. This guy doesn't. That's not the point. The point is coronavirus is the pin that pricked the economic bubble. If it wasn't coronavirus, it was going to be the trade and tariff disputes. If it wasn't the trade and tariff disputes, it was going to be immigration. If it wasn't immigration, it was going to be a war with Iran, a war with North Korea. In other words, there's always a major distraction, that the leaders in Washington have to shove down your throats to convince you that it's not what you think it is, it's something else. But all of the indicators were there. They're still there. They're still growing. Stimulus money is still being pumped into the economy, into the stock markets. They're going to have to save the oil industry with money. They're going to have to save airline industry, cruise ships industry, whatever, with money. See, once upon a time when a business failed, they went out of business. They actually reorganized or something. A lot of times the shareholders, or rather the employees took over and everybody took a hit and they reorganized or something. But the capital markets is not something to take for granted. It typically determines on its own who the winners and losers are. This is socialism that you guys are accepting right now. So for those of you who thought Trump was all about capitalism and straight up businessman, nothing could be further from the truth. You're looking at socialism. when you have to take over various industries, when you have to pick winners and losers, when you decide that, you know, this company's going to get more money as compared to the smaller company, or the airlines are going to get some, not the small businesses, that consumers are going to have to wait and beg for money. That's socialism. Okay, that's an attempt to micromanage your economy. That's not capitalism. Capitalism, you actually have winners and losers. Okay, if you can't survive, your business can't survive, for instance, in a capitalistic economy, that means you go out of business or you reorganize or something. Okay, so make sure you guys, you know, pay attention to what's going on, and don't be so easily deceived by the headlines. Okay. And stop arguing points that you don't know anything about. Get a good foundation in personal finance. Get a good foundation in economics. Get a good foundation in economics, finance, and it wouldn't hurt also if you found out about the Federal Reserve. I know a few of you heard about the creature from Jekyll Island and how the Federal Reserve and the central banking system was created. But all of that is very important. The money in your pocket is your lifeline, okay? It determines whether or not you're going to be living, you know, in a manner that's, you know, suitable or whatever, or whether or not you're going to be suffering. So learn about the money in your pockets. Where did it come from? How was it created? How was it created? What backs it? What doesn't back it? And all that. And then, you know, as I mentioned, I always have to throw in there, trying to figure out what Bitcoin is, try to figure out what the blockchain is, try to figure out what those other cryptocurrencies, the altcoins or whatever, what they have to offer. Okay? And you guys stay safe, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good day. Bye.